December 17th, 1944, 05:30 hours, Hansfeld, Belgium. The roar of the Tiger tank's Maybach engine faltered, coughed once, and died. In the icy pre-dawn fog of the Ardennes, 60 tons of steel became nothing more than a frozen carcass on the roadside. Inside, SS Obersturmbannführer Jochen Peiper slammed his fist against the hatch, the metallic clang echoing through the still air. His driver's voice came up, tight with panic. "Commander, the tanks are empty. Even the reserve is dry." And with that, one of Germany's most powerful armored columns, 67 tanks, 149 half-tracks, nearly 5,000 Waffen-SS soldiers, stood paralyzed, not by enemy fire, but by an empty fuel gauge. Peiper climbed down from his command vehicle, boots crunching on the frozen earth. Ahead, in the mist, lay the American outpost of Hansfeld, hastily abandoned only hours before. The evidence of flight was everywhere, oil drums still smoking, tin cups with coffee still warm, and beyond them, stretching like a bizarre offering, were rows upon rows of jerry cans, thousands of them. Olive-drab American fuel cans stacked 3 meters high. Peiper's adjutant pried one open. The sharp fumes of high-octane gasoline filled the air. This wasn't the thin, synthetic fuel Germany had been forced to rely on. This was pure American petrol, the kind of fuel his Tigers had never dreamed of tasting. Soldiers rushed forward, hauling cans, refueling their lifeless machines. Engines sputtered, then roared back to life. For a fleeting moment, it felt like divine intervention. Here was more than 50,000 gallons of gasoline, enough to push the column forward to the Meuse River, enough perhaps to alter the fate of the entire Ardennes offensive. Yet as Peiper stood among the pyramids of fuel cans, counting the bounty, a darker realization crept in. If the Americans could abandon so much, what reserves must they have behind the lines? A war already lost in the numbers. 6 months earlier, Albert Speer, Hitler's Minister of Armaments, had warned Hitler with a report that should have ended all talk of major offensives. Allied bombing had reduced Germany's synthetic fuel industry, the lifeblood of the Wehrmacht, to a shadow of itself. In April 1944, the Luna Works produced 175,000 tons of fuel. By September, output had collapsed to just 5,000 tons. The hydrogenation plants at Politz, Bleckhammer, and Brooks were limping at less than 10% capacity. The Luftwaffe was grounded, pilot training cut from 250 flight hours to barely 60. Armored divisions owned tanks that could not move. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States was drowning in oil. In 1944 alone, America pumped 1.8 billion barrels of crude oil, nearly 70% of the world's supply. Germany, even counting Romanian oil and synthetic production, managed just 33 million barrels, less than 2% of American output. One side waged mechanized war with oceans of petroleum, the other dragged guns with horses. Mathematics of an offensive built to fail. Hitler's plan for the Ardennes required at least 4.5 million gallons to reach Antwerp. On paper, 5 million were allocated. In reality, barely half of that reached frontline units due to transport breakdowns. Camp Group Peiper received just 31,000 gallons at the start of the offensive, enough fuel for roughly 50 miles of combat operations. The Meuse lay 65 miles away. The arithmetic of failure was built into the plan. Success depended not on German reserves, but on stealing Allied ones. On the final briefing on December 14th, Sepp Dietrich, commander of the 6th SS Panzer Army, was blunt. "You will have enough fuel if you take it from the Americans." On the same day, 20 miles away, Captain James Rose of the 743rd Tank Battalion scribbled in his diary, "Resupply today,
8,000 gallons. Third delivery this week. Storage tanks already full. One army measured by the gallon, the other by the ocean. Hansfeld, miracle or warning? That is why on the morning of December 17th, when Peiper's men stumbled into the American depot at Hansfeld, they thought they had been saved. Soldiers shouted with joy as tigers and panthers drank deeply from captured jerry cans. A gift from the gods, one officer called it. But inside the depot office, Sergeant Wilhelm Hoffman uncovered shipping papers. He could read English. The documents traced the gasoline's journey, shipped from Texas, refined and loaded in New York, convoyed across the Atlantic to Liverpool, piped to Normandy, then trucked 400 miles into Belgium, all in less than 6 weeks. Hoffman showed the manifests to Peiper. The SS commander read them twice, then crushed the papers in his fist. He said nothing, but his face turned pale. He understood what the numbers meant. Germany had taken months to scrape together a fraction of this fuel. The Americans could send oceans across an ocean as if it were nothing. The miracle at Hansfeld was also a revelation. Germany was not fighting the same war. By noon on December 17, 1944, Camp Group Peiper surged forward from Hansfeld, their tanks roaring once more thanks to the captured fuel. The tigers and panthers clawed up narrow Belgian roads, leaving behind the eerie scene of abandoned American coffee, still steaming in tin mugs. For the moment, the German offensive seemed alive again. But beneath the rumble of treads, the mathematics of destruction ticked like a hidden clock. The 50,000 gallons seized that morning had revived the column, yes, but it would not last long. Tigers consumed nearly 2.5 gallons per mile in combat. Panthers averaged 1.5 gallons. In the twisting, muddy lanes of the Ardennes, fuel consumption rose by nearly 40%. Every skirmish, every delay was measured not in shells or casualties, but in liters burned. The road to Malmedy. Fuel and brutality. As Peiper's column pushed towards the town of Bullingen and then Malmedy, they captured another small American depot, scooping up additional barrels of gasoline. But the sense of desperation grew. Every prisoner, every delay meant fuel wasted. On the afternoon of December 17th, in the fields outside Malmedy, Peiper's men committed one of the most infamous atrocities of the war. 84 American prisoners of war were massacred. Why? Historians have debated ideology, indoctrination, and orders, but many testimonies revealed another, colder factor: logistics. Transporting prisoners consumed gasoline. Trucks were few, fuel scarcer still. As one German soldier later recalled, "We could not spare the fuel to carry them. We could not spare the time." War crimes born of fuel starvation. Even human lives were weighed against gallons. Stavello, 2 million gallons in flames. By evening, Peiper's spearhead reached Stavello, a town hiding one of the largest American forward fuel depots in the Ardennes. Within its perimeter were more than 2.1 million gallons of gasoline, stacked in neat rows of jerry cans across 15 acres, enough for Peiper's division all the way to Antwerp and back. But the Americans were waiting. Captain John Brewster of the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion had been ordered to deny the depot at any cost. His men strung trails of gasoline between stacks of cans, white phosphorus grenades in hand. At 16:30, with German tanks approaching, Brewster gave the signal. Sergeant Paul Solis hurled the first grenade. A wall of flame erupted, racing through the yard. In minutes, the entire depot was a firestorm. Witnesses said the inferno rose 1,000 feet into the sky, a pillar of smoke visible for miles. For 3 days it burned, consuming fuel that could have propelled Peiper's armor to the Meuse River. The German spearhead arrived too late, greeted not with gasoline but with fire. Peiper watched from the turret of his Tiger. For 5 long minutes he stood silent, eyes fixed on the black column stabbing into the heavens. Then he climbed down and muttered to his adjutant, "They can afford to burn 2 million gallons just to deny it to us. What are we doing here?" The Americans burn millions. Stavello was not an isolated act. Across the Ardennes, U.S. engineers set torch to their own reserves. Stavato, 2.5 million gallons destroyed. Stomont, another 1.1 million gone in flames. Spa, 2.5 million reduced to smoke. In the first week alone, the Americans deliberately destroyed over 8 million gallons of fuel.